Seattle had that familiar gray drizzle that night. Not rain exactly, just the kind of mist that sticks to your skin and makes the city feel like it's always in the middle of something half-finished. I was walking down Union Street, not really in a rush, just *ling time before heading home. I had planned to pick up takeout from a Thai spot Caitlin liked, thinking maybe we'd sit down and have a real dinner for once, something other than leftovers or quiet phone-scrolling silence at opposite ends of the couch. It had been a weird few months. Not bad, not exactly. Just muted, like someone had taken the saturation down on our lives and we'd both agreed not to notice. I told myself it was work stress, or maybe we were just in that comfortable phase people always talked about. But the truth was, things had started to feel off, subtly, almost imperceptibly. I just didn't want to admit it out loud. That's when I saw her. At first, I wasn't even sure it was Caitlin. She had her back to me, standing near the entrance of the Armand Hotel downtown. She was dressed sharp, like cocktail hour sharp. Sleek gray coat, heels I hadn't seen before, and her hair pinned up in the neat, understated way she usually reserved for events or formal work functions. She was talking to someone, a man. I slowed down instinctively, squinting through the low glow of the streetlights. The man turned slightly, and I caught his profile. Nathan Hale, her boss. I'd met him once at her firm's end-of-year party. He was the kind of guy who made you feel like you were being interviewed every time he looked at you. That effortless, magnetic confidence. The kind that could charm an entire boardroom while calculating the next 6 moves ahead. I didn't trust him then. Something about the way he hovered around Caitlin, too familiar, too comfortable. Now, standing outside the Armand, that familiarity was back. It wasn't overt. They weren't touching, weren't even smiling all that much. But their closeness was casual in a way that only happens when people have history. There was a kind of unspoken rhythm to their conversation. Tight spacing, low voices, subtle eye contact. Not the usual rapport between a manager and his team member. That's when he handed her something. It was an envelope, thick, sealed, the kind of thing that usually holds contracts or proposals. She took it without hesitation. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out something else. A key card. My stomach dropped before I even fully registered what I was seeing. It wasn't just a generic plastic swipe card. This one had a printed sleeve with the hotel's logo, a room number scrawled on it in blue ink, and underneath that, complimentary breakfast for 2. He handed it to her as casually as if it were a business card. Caitlin paused. It wasn't long, half a second, maybe, but long enough for her to make a choice. She looked up at him, then down at the card, and bent to pick it up after he accidentally dropped it to the ground. She didn't fumble, didn't act surprised. She just slipped it into her purse like it was a receipt from a grocery run. And then she smiled. Not the bright, open grin I fell in love with, but the tight, professional one she uses when she's hiding something behind her eyes. I didn't realize I'd stopped walking until a bike courier brushed past me and muttered a curse under his breath. I stepped into a nearby alcove, half shielded by the awning of a flower shop, just in time to see Caitlin adjust her coat and give Nathan a light touch on the elbow. Then she turned and walked briskly away, heading down the sidewalk like nothing had happened. He didn't follow her. He just stood there for a moment, looking in the direction she'd gone, then slipped back into the hotel without a glance around. I stood there for another 5 minutes, soaked in mist, heart pounding in my chest. What I had just seen, I didn't even know how to categorize it. It wasn't definitive. It wasn't proof. If I told someone else, they'd say I was being paranoid. A boss gives an employee some paperwork and accidentally drops a hotel key card? She picks it up. Big deal. Maybe it was meant for a visiting executive. Maybe it was just poorly timed. But I know Caitlin. I know how she reacts when she's caught off guard. And that pause, however brief, told me everything. She had to think about it. And then she made a choice. No confusion. No clarification. No, wait. I think you dropped this. Just concealment. She hadn't seen me, thank God. Or maybe she had and was pretending not to. Either way, I ducked back into the crowd, heart hammering in my ears, and walked a few blocks before I stopped to catch my breath. I pulled out my phone to check the time. suddenly remembering the dinner I was supposed to pick up. But my appetite was gone. I stood on the corner of 4th and Spring for what felt like hours, watching strangers pass me by. All I could see was her face. Blank, composed, unbothered. It would have been easier if she looked guilty, or even anxious, but she looked like someone who had already rationalized what she was doing. And that scared me more than anything. I ended up circling the block twice before heading back to my car. I didn't text her, didn't call, just sat in the driver's seat with my hands on the wheel and 1,000 thoughts crashing into each other. The logical part of my brain tried to do damage control. You don't know the whole story. Don't jump to conclusions. There could be an explanation. But another part of me, the quiet, instinctual part, was already putting together the timeline. The late nights, the sudden wardrobe upgrades, her phone always face down, the guarded looks, the stories that didn't quite track. And now, this. The key card wasn't the problem. It was the way she accepted it. Like it had happened before. Like it wasn't a surprise. The worst part? I didn't even feel angry. Not yet. I felt displaced. Like I had stepped out of my own life and into someone else's. Like I was watching a movie where I didn't recognize the characters anymore. Even though they were using my name, my face, my marriage. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the mist had turned into a steady rain. Caitlin's car was already there. Lights on in the front room. Warm, inviting. Like nothing was wrong. Like she hadn't just picked up a hotel key card from another man on a quiet street corner. I sat in the car for a long time. Then I got out, wiped my face with the sleeve of my jacket, and walked inside. She greeted me with a smile, one I suddenly didn't trust, and asked if I'd gotten the food. I lied, told her the place was closed early. She shrugged, said she'd just whipped something up, and turned back toward the kitchen without a second thought. I watched her move around the house like everything was fine. But something had shifted. She didn't know it yet. Maybe I didn't either. But the first crack had formed, and I couldn't unsee it. Couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to Caitlin, listening to the soft rhythm of her breathing and watching the ceiling as the shadows shifted with every passing car. She looked peaceful, like someone with a clear conscience. Me? My chest felt tight, like something inside had quietly come undone, and I was the only one who noticed. At some point, I rolled over and stared at her back. She was facing away from me, curled slightly, her hand tucked under her pillow. That used to be comforting, the closeness, the quiet warmth of sharing a space with someone you trusted. But now, I couldn't shake the image of her outside that hotel, standing a little too close to Nathan Hale, taking that key card like she'd been handed a cup of coffee. It wasn't just what I saw. It was what it triggered. One moment unlocked 100 others I had buried, dismissed, or willfully ignored. And once the door cracked open, they came pouring out faster than I could stop them. The late nights were the first. Caitlin used to hate staying late at work. Always said the fluorescent lights gave her headaches, that she couldn't focus after 6. For the first 6 years of our marriage, she'd be home by 6:30 like clockwork, sometimes earlier, complaining about client calls and office politics, kicking off her heels at the door like they personally betrayed her. But somewhere along the way that changed. I remember when I first noticed it. She said she was staying late to help finish a pitch. Nathan asked for a few of us to hang back, she said casually, pouring a glass of wine after walking through the door at 10:15. I didn't question it. Deadlines happen. But then it became once a week. Then twice. Then most nights. I asked her about it once, just once, half joking, trying not to sound insecure. You and Nathan must be running that place by now. She laughed, but there was a flicker in her expression. Something tight and momentary. He trusts me with a lot, she said, almost like she was defending him. Besides, I like feeling useful. You know how boring it gets at home. I didn't answer that. Should I have? Maybe. Next came the weekends. Caitlin signed up for a new yoga studio last spring. Nothing strange about that. She's always been health-conscious, meal plans, skin routines, the works. But this place was across town. A boutique wellness center with Himalayan salt lamps and $25 smoothie sh*TS. Suddenly, Saturday mornings were sacred. She'd leave in branded leggings, hair in a ponytail, and return 2 hours later looking perfect. No sweat, no flushed skin. Hair somehow even neater than before. She always smelled faintly of perfume, not the natural kind either, the kind you wear for someone, not for downward dog. When I asked her how yoga went, she'd shrug. Relaxing, she'd say, already walking toward the shower. You should come with me sometime. I said I'd think about it. I never went. Then there were the clothes. Caitlin's always had good taste, but she's never been flashy. Lately, though, new items started showing up in the closet. Dresses I'd never seen her wear, tucked behind her usual work staples. Some still had tags. A navy satin slip dress, a high-slit maroon gown, a pair of heels that had no business being in an office. When I asked about them, she waved it off. Sample sale. Too good to pass up. Only, I never saw her wear them. Not once. Not to dinners, not to events. They weren't for me. That much became painfully clear. Her phone changed too. At the start of our marriage, Caitlin didn't care much about privacy. Her phone lived on the kitchen counter or beside the bed. Screen up, unlocked, buzzing openly with harmless notifications. She used to ask me to check her texts for her if her hands were full. There were no secrets. But now, it was always face down. Always locked. Notifications hidden. She started keeping it with her, even in the bathroom. Once, I walked in without knocking, like I always had, and she jumped like I'd caught her committing a felony. I apologized. She smiled. But she held that phone like it was made of glass, and she wasn't about to let me see the cracks. One afternoon, I was cleaning out the back seat of her car when I found a small Victoria's Secret bag buried beneath a gym towel. I wasn't snooping. It slipped out when I moved the towel. Inside was a Berg *NDY lace set, something I would have remembered seeing her wear. I held it for a long moment, unsure whether to ask or to pretend it didn't exist. Eventually, I left it exactly where I found it. Later that night, I mentioned it, casually. You get something new? She didn't even flinch. Oh, that? It was for Denise's bridal shower. Gag gift. We all brought lingerie for her honeymoon. It made sense. Sort of. Except I didn't remember any mention of a bridal shower. And Denise? She was already married by then. I Googled the date later just to be sure. She'd lied. Flat out. But back then I didn't push. I didn't want to believe it. I told myself maybe I misremembered. Maybe she was embarrassed. Maybe I was overthinking everything. But when you collect enough maybes, they start to look a lot like a definitely. There was a dinner party a few months ago that kept circling back in my mind. Her firm had hosted it at a fancy rooftop restaurant. I was seated 2 chairs down from Caitlin, with Nathan sitting directly beside her. The whole night, he kept whispering things into her ear. Not in a creepy way. Not obviously. But enough to make me notice how she leaned in every time he spoke. How her laugh had that lilting softness. The one she used to save for me. Afterward, I asked how she liked the event. It was nice, she said. Nathan's a great mentor. Mentor, right? I didn't sleep that night either. Then came the perfume. It showed up in tiny ways. A new scent I didn't recognize on her coat. A bottle in the bathroom that wasn't hers, or at least not one she'd ever worn around me. Got it from a coworker, she said. One of those pass-it-along things. That didn't make any sense, but I didn't press. I let it go. God, I let so many things go. Not because I believed her, but because I was scared of what it meant if I didn't. Now, after seeing her outside the hotel, after watching her take that key card like she was picking up dry cleaning, all of it came rushing back like a tidal wave. Every lie I'd brushed off. Every inconsistency I'd smoothed over in my head. All the little signs I had filed away under "Don't make trouble." She's probably tired. It's probably nothing. It wasn't nothing. It was a carefully constructed story. A play she'd been performing for months while I sat in the audience clapping for a marriage that was slowly fading behind the curtain. I sat in my office the next morning, trying to answer emails but rereading the same sentence 5 times in a row. My coffee went cold. My hand kept drifting toward my phone, wanting to check something. Anything. That would prove I was wrong. But I wasn't. Not anymore. That night, Caitlin came home late again. She kissed my cheek, said traffic was brutal, and asked if I wanted to order sushi. I stared at her and realized I didn't know who I was looking at, because the woman in front of me wasn't the same one I married. And I wasn't sure when she disappeared. The anonymous email came on a Wednesday morning. It was one of those mornings where everything felt routine. I poured my coffee, checked my work calendar, and braced for another day of pretending everything was normal. Caitlin had left early, saying she had an executive breakfast before heading to the office. I nodded, kissed her cheek, and watched her walk out the door in a navy suit I'd never seen before. I was scrolling through my inbox when I saw it. No subject, no sender name, just an address I didn't recognize. My first instinct was to delete it, spam probably, but something about it stopped me. The preview line simply said, "You deserve to know the truth." My hand hovered over the trackpad. Then I clicked. Inside were 4 attachments, all photographs. The body of the email had only one sentence. "She isn't who you think she is." No greeting, no explanation, nothing else. I stared at the screen for a long time before opening the first photo. It was grainy, probably taken from a distance, but unmistakable. Caitlin, my wife, stepping out of a boutique hotel in Portland. Not the Armand, but one with the same kind of polished discretion. Standing next to her was Nathan Hale. He was holding a leather overnight bag. She was smiling at something he'd said, her hand brushing his sleeve as naturally as breathing. The timestamp said last Friday. She told me she was at a regional training conference that night. I clicked the second photo. They were sitting in a corner booth of a cafe, plates of breakfast food between them. She was laughing at something on his phone, leaning so close their shoulders touched. Her hair was loose, like she just rolled out of bed. He was stirring his coffee with one hand, his other resting against the back of her chair. The caption at the bottom read, "Breakfast for 2. The third image hit harder. A roadside stop. A black SUV I didn't recognize parked under a sign for a scenic overlook. Nathan leaning against the hood, sunglasses on. Caitlin standing between his legs, head tilted up as he said something. He was smiling. She was laughing. Their bodies angled toward each other like gravity itself was pulling them closer. The fourth photo stopped my breath. It was daylight, clear as anything. No grain, no blur. They were on a downtown street I didn't recognize, walking arm in arm. And then there it was. They kissed. Not a peck, not a slip. A full, open, lingering kiss in the middle of the sidewalk. Like they didn't care who saw. Like the world around them had disappeared. My hand went numb on the mouse. The photos stared back at me like a verdict. I don't remember how long I sat there. Maybe minutes. Maybe hours. The coffee beside me went cold, untouched. My email notification pinged twice more, but I didn't look. I just stared at that last image, feeling the bottom drop out from under everything I'd been holding together. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This wasn't yoga classes or secret lingerie or a hotel keycard I could rationalize. This was proof. Proof she wasn't just flirting or straying emotionally. Proof she had crossed every line. And the worst part? She looked happy. Not guilty. Not conflicted. Happy. I saved the attachments to a folder labeled Receipts and closed the laptop. My heart was hammering, but my head felt strangely clear, like a fog had lifted. I thought back to every time she'd said she was too tired, working late, traveling for training, every excuse, every moment I doubted myself instead of her. It all clicked into place like puzzle pieces that had been sitting upside down. I'd always imagined, in some abstract way, what infidelity would feel like. Rage, maybe. Explosive, all-consuming. But in that moment, I didn't feel rage. I felt a hollow, like someone had scooped me out and left me standing there, an empty version of myself. By the time Caitlin texted me that afternoon, running late again, big project. Love you. I had already stopped believing anything she said. That night, I didn't confront her. I didn't even mention the email. When she came home, hair slightly mussed, perfume faint but different, she smiled like everything was fine. She kissed my cheek and asked if I wanted to watch a show. I nodded, sat beside her on the couch and pretended to be the man who still believed her. Pretended not to see the way she tucked her phone out of view every time it buzzed. Inside, though, I was already somewhere else, somewhere quieter, colder. A place where my marriage had already ended, and I was just waiting for the paperwork to catch up. Over the next few days, more pieces arrived. Not just from the anonymous emailer, whoever they were, but from my own digging. Credit card statements showed charges at hotels I'd never stayed in. Receipts tucked in her purse for dinners with the team at restaurants 2 cities away. A rideshare log showing trips that didn't match her stories. Each discovery was like another nail sealing something shut inside me. One evening, when she said she had a networking dinner, I followed her car. Not close, just enough to see where she went. She didn't go to the office. She didn't go to any restaurant I knew. She went to the Armand Hotel. This time, I stayed in my car across the street, headlights off. I watched her get out, hand her bag to the valet, and disappear inside. 10 minutes later, Nathan walked in too. I sat there for nearly an hour, rain tapping on the windshield, my fingers clenched around the steering wheel. Part of me wanted to storm in, to drag her out, to make a scene. But another part, the part that had grown stronger with each lie, knew that wasn't the way. Not yet. If Caitlin was going to live a double life, I wasn't going to be the clueless husband stumbling into her story. I was going to end it on my terms. When she came home later, smelling faintly of whiskey and citrus, I was already in bed. She whispered, "Sorry, long night," and slipped under the covers. I pretended to sleep. That night, staring at the ceiling in the dark, I made my decision. I wasn't going to confront her with words. Not yet. I was going to prepare, quietly, methodically, so that when the moment came, there'd be nothing left for her to twist, nothing left for her to deny. Just the truth. And me finally free from the lies. There's a strange kind of calm that settles over you once the denial dies. I'd spent weeks circling the truth, telling myself there had to be an explanation, some innocent reason for every discrepancy. But after that email, after the photos, after following her to the Armand, the pretending stopped. The noise in my head, the justifications, the second-guessing, quieted. All that was left was a cold, steady certainty. My marriage was already over. I just hadn't told her yet. I didn't explode. I didn't throw things or demand answers. I didn't storm into the hotel and drag her out. The version of me who might have done that no longer existed. Instead, I woke up the next morning, poured my coffee, and started making lists. The first list was practical finances. Bank accounts, credit cards, shared assets. I opened a new account at a different bank, transferred part of my paycheck there, and changed the password to my personal email. I ordered a new credit card in my name only. Small, quiet steps, imperceptible to anyone not looking closely. Caitlin still wasn't looking. The second list was legal. I called an attorney recommended by a colleague, a woman named Linda who specialized in high-asset divorces. We met at her office downtown, in a conference room that smelled faintly of leather and old books. She listened without interrupting as I laid out everything, the hotel sightings, the photos, the receipts, the anonymous email. When I was done, she tapped her pen on a yellow legal pad and nodded slowly. "You've got more than enough for grounds," she said. "In fact, you've got one of the cleanest cases I've seen. No children, no major debts, documented infidelity. If you want out, Thomas, you'll get out. And you'll be protected." Her words should have felt like a relief, but they didn't. They just felt heavy, like a door closing. "I don't want a war," I said. "I don't want to humiliate her. I just want it done." Linda leaned back in her chair. "Then we'll do it quietly. You prepare. You collect what you need. And when you're ready, we file. Simple." I nodded, staring at the city skyline outside her window. Simple. Nothing about this felt simple. The third list was emotional. I didn't write this one down, but it lived in my head. The things I'd need to reclaim once she was gone. The hobbies I'd abandoned. The friends I'd drifted from. The parts of myself I'd put on a shelf to keep the marriage afloat. I realized how small my world had become while I was busy protecting it. At home, I became a ghost. I still went through the motions. Cooked dinner, asked about her day, even laughed at the right moments, but inside, I was gone. She didn't seem to notice. If she did, she didn't ask. Maybe she thought I was just distracted by work. Maybe she didn't care. Maybe the man in the hotel room was filling the space I'd once occupied. Late at night, when she was asleep, I'd sit in my office and go through files on my computer. I gathered bank statements, **TS of texts, timestamps from the photos, copies of hotel receipts. Everything went into a neat folder labeled TC Private. It felt surreal, like I was preparing evidence for a case where I was both the plaintiff and the victim. Sometimes I'd wander into the bedroom while she slept and just look at her. Her face relaxed, her hair fanned out on the pillow. The same woman I'd met in grad school, who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during long bus rides, who once cried when I surprised her with a second-hand bike because hers had been stolen. The same woman, and not the same at all. She felt like a stranger inhabiting someone I used to know. I started packing her things little by little. Not everything, not yet, just the items that were clearly hers. Dresses still in dry cleaning bags. Shoes lined up in the closet like soldiers. The lingerie bag I'd found in her car. I bought a suitcase and set it upright in the guest room closet, out of sight. Each time I added something, it felt like carving a notch into the end of our story. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not friends, not family. But one evening I called my brother Mark. We don't talk much, different cities, different lives, but he's always been the one person who cuts through my self-delusion. "She's cheating, isn't she?" he asked quietly after I explained everything. "Yes," I said. My voice didn't shake. "It's over." There was a long silence on the line. Then, "What do you need me to do?" "Nothing," I said. "Just, no." He sighed. "I'm sorry, Tom." "Me too." After we hung up, I sat in the dark living room and let the silence settle. For the first time in months, I didn't feel crazy. I felt, if not calm, then clear. Caitlin, meanwhile, seemed oblivious. She still spun her stories about work dinners and yoga retreats, still put her phone face down on the counter, still walked through the door at 10:30 with her hair perfect and her eyes a little too bright. I watched her move around the house like an actress hitting her marks, unaware that the show was about to close. One night, she came home humming, a faint smile playing on her lips. She poured herself a glass of wine and said Nathan had offered her a career-changing opportunity. I nodded, said, "That's great," and excused myself to my office. Behind the closed door, I added another **T to my folder. Her email to Nathan confirming a hotel reservation under a fake corporate account. She'd left her work laptop open again. She'd stopped even trying to hide it. That was the night I decided the moment had come. Not to confront her, not yet, but to finish my preparations. I took the suitcase out of the guest room closet, laid it flat on the bed, and began filling it. Dresses, shoes, cosmetics, work documents she'd left on my desk. Even the framed photo of her and Nathan at a company gala she'd tucked into a drawer. Into the suitcase it went. The sound of the zipper closing felt like a door slamming shut. I set the suitcase by the front door, upright, handle extended. A silent line drawn in the sand. The next morning I woke up early. She was still asleep, curled under the duvet. For a moment I almost faltered, almost slipped back into the warmth of our old routine, pretended none of this had happened. But then I remembered the photos, the kiss on the street, the hotel keycard, the lies. I showered, dressed, and left for work without waking her. When I got home that evening, she was standing in the kitchen, confused, staring at the suitcase. "What's this?" she asked, her voice a mix of annoyance and fear. I didn't answer right away. I walked past her, set my briefcase on the counter, and looked her in the eye. "Your things," I said simply. "You'll need them." She blinked, like she couldn't process the words. "Thomas, what are you talking about?" I didn't respond. Not yet. I wasn't ready for the confrontation. Not tonight. But the suitcase was there, and it said everything I hadn't. When I said the words, "You'll need them," Something shifted behind Caitlin's eyes. It wasn't immediate recognition, not yet. First, it was confusion, then disbelief, then that faint, instinctive panic that creeps into a liar's face the moment they realize they've been found out, and the game is no longer under their control. She looked from the suitcase to me, back to the suitcase again. "What is this, Thomas?" she asked, trying to sound calm, but her voice carried that sharp undertone, like she was scolding a child for acting out. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The silence said more than anything I could have possibly explained. She took a step forward, arms folding across her chest. "Okay, seriously, what is this? Some kind of passive-aggressive statement? You mad I've been working late or something?" Still, I said nothing. I wanted to see how far she would go, how many layers of the story she'd try to maintain before the cracks forced her to speak the truth. She always did hate silence. In college, she'd fill the quiet with jokes, random trivia, even humming. Now, years later, she still couldn't tolerate it. Silence, to her, was exposure, vulnerability, and tonight it was judgment. "Is this about last weekend?" she pressed. "The conference? You didn't say anything about it then. I don't understand where this is coming from." I finally looked at her, really looked at her. She had changed clothes since work. Comfortable joggers, a t-shirt with a faded logo from a 10K we ran together 4 years ago. Her makeup was off. Her hair was in a messy bun. She looked like the Caitlin I married. But I knew better now. The costume didn't work anymore. "I know," I said quietly. Her face froze. "Know what?" That's when I moved past her and walked into my office. I opened the drawer where I kept the folder, everything I had collected. It was labeled plainly, Caitlin. I held it for a second, felt heavier than paper should. Then I carried it back into the kitchen, placed it on the table and took a step back. She stared at it. "What is that?" "You should open it," I said. "Unless you want me to tell you myself." She didn't move at first. Her fingers twitched at her side. Then, slowly, she walked to the table, sat down, and opened the folder. She looked at the first page, stopped. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Then she turned the next page, and the next, and the next. Receipts, screensh asterisk ts, hotel bookings, credit card charges, the photos, the emails, every lie in documented, time-stamped detail. Her affair laid bare, stripped of charm, alibi, and illusion. She flipped back to the photo of her and Nathan kissing on that Portland sidewalk. Her hand shook slightly. When she looked up at me, her eyes weren't angry. They were terrified. "Who sent this to you?" she asked. Not denying, not defending, just trying to locate the source of the unraveling. "It doesn't matter," I said. "You gave it to me piece by piece. I just didn't connect the dots until someone else did it for me." She opened her mouth, closed it again. I could see the words forming before they even left her lips. "It's not what it looks like." I was confused. We were going through a rough patch. I waited. I wanted to hear which script she'd choose. But instead, she whispered, "How long have you known?" "A while," I said. She swallowed. "And you just waited?" I wanted to be sure. Caitlin leaned back in her chair and let out a short, humorless laugh. "Jesus, Thomas." I didn't respond. "You just stood there while I lied to your face every day?" "You weren't talking to me," I said. "You were performing for me." I let the show run its course. She looked like she was about to cry, but no tears came. And then came the pivot I expected. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," she said, her voice soft and broken. "It wasn't serious at first. I didn't even like him like that. I mean, he was charming, sure, and he paid attention to me. But it wasn't supposed to become anything real." I raised an eyebrow. "But it did." Her shoulders slumped. "Yeah," she said. "It did." A long silence followed. "I never wanted to hurt you," she added. "I swear to God, Thomas, I didn't plan this." I looked down at the folder. Affairs don't need planning. They happen one decision at a time. You made a lot of them. She stared at the suitcase, then back at me. So what now? You're just kicking me out? I didn't answer, because it wasn't about kicking her out. It was about removing her from the version of my life she no longer belonged to. Caitlin stood slowly and walked over to the suitcase. She placed a hand on it, ran her fingers over the handle like it might disappear. Then she turned back to me. I guess I deserve this, she said. That was the first true thing she'd said all night. Still, I didn't speak. I don't know what I was thinking, she added. I felt invisible for months, like we were living together but not really living together. He noticed me. There it was, the justification, the attempt to build a bridge back to understanding. I let her talk. You were always working, always tired. You stopped, I don't know, seeing me. I finally spoke. So instead of talking to me, you let him in. I tried to talk to you, she said, a sudden edge in her voice. You brushed it off. You acted like everything was fine. I nodded slowly. You're right. I didn't want to see the cracks. But you didn't just walk away. You chose to lie. You chose to pretend. Every night. I know, she said, her voice breaking. I know I did. I messed up. I know that. I waited. I'm sorry, Thomas. I believed her. But that didn't change anything. I know you are, I said. But being sorry doesn't undo what you did. She looked like she wanted to collapse right there. Instead, she pulled her hair back with trembling hands and stared at the suitcase again. I love him, she said suddenly. The words landed with a dull thud between us. There it was. Not a slip. Not a test. A confession. She blinked, then continued. I didn't want to say that. I didn't mean to, but I do. I didn't realize it until a few weeks ago. But yeah, I do. And just like that, the last piece fell into place. I figured, I said. People don't lie that long for flings. She looked stunned at how steady my voice was. Maybe she expected yelling. Maybe she wanted it. But I had no anger left in me. Just clarity. So what do you want? She asked, her voice quiet again. You want me gone tonight? No, I said. You can stay one more night. Sleep in the guest room. I already changed the sheets. She stared at me for a long time. I didn't want this, she whispered. I didn't want it to end like this.